Welcome to the Ascend Growth AI podcast, where we mix smart growth moves with a little AI magic. I'm Theresa. Let's dive in. Today's guest is Tony Forte, co-founder of Coffee Uplifts People, also known as Cup, a brand that's brewing more than just great coffee. It's building community, equity, and culture through every cup. So Tony, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Theresa.
Can you start by sharing your background and what's inspired you to start Coffee Uplifts People?
I'll tell you what. So in order to really get into that, I got to give a little bit of background context. I come from a fashion footwear background. I spent most of my corporate years working with Nike. And then from transitioning from Nike, I went into opening up and co-founding a chain of sneaker stores called Woodstack. Opened that up in 2011. And then it was at 2011 at Woodstack that I met my current business partner, Angela Yee, and when we opened up the Coffee Uplifts People in 2020, officially 2020, the store in 2021. Interesting story about how that happened is we actually had a juice company called Drink Fresh Juice. And it was at Drink Fresh Juice that aligned with COVID. Aligned is a very relative word, but it's the business took off pretty well at the beginning of COVID because of the amount of it had a lot of ginger in it, and a lot of people were looking for boosting immunity and so forth. So we were able to connect with a coffee business. And that coffee business was having a downturn in business because people were not in the offices as much. It was then that I realized and learned more about the business of coffee and the disparities that exist globally around coffee, the checkered history of coffee around colonialism, and even to this day about how much is not represented in coffee. So you're looking at nearly 100% of the world's coffee that comes from regions of people of color. You're talking about Ethiopia, Kenya. You're talking about Central America, South America, Vietnam. You're talking about all these places that are rich in culture and traditions and people of color. Meanwhile, they make up less than about 5% of the ownership of the coffee industry. Further to that, when you look at the representation of women in coffee from an ownership capacity, you even saw that being not being as present as well, even though in the workforce of coffee, women make up more than 70% of the workforce within processing and farming of coffee and so forth. And so it was like, you know what, we can do something between my background in fashion and lifestyle, Angela's background in media, and me having this not being my first entrepreneurial endeavor. It's like, let's really kick up some dust. Let's try to disrupt some things. And that's what we set out for. Thus enters Coffee Uplifts People. We started the brand in 2020. We're a multi-channel brand. And so I'll go more into that as we get further into the interview about all different ways we show up. But we really wanted to set out to say, you know what, how do we create coffee? And are we able to come into the coffee space and then create a pathway for more people of color, more women to have an equitable space within coffee, feel represented, and create an energy that is of the culture of where of the spaces that coffee comes from. A lot of times it can be very hipster and sometimes even granola. And it's like, how do we create a space that has a little bit of energy around it where everyone can feel welcomed around coffee?
Wow, that's amazing. I actually had no idea with that background, your background, and also the coffee industry in general. Thank you for sharing that. I guess is that your mission behind Cup?
Yeah, that's one of our grounding missions. I don't think we're just a one mission kind of thing. I mean, if you had to really drill it down, it would be to. And when I look at the namesake, Coffee Uplifts People, it's like a triple entendre. Coffee uplifts people functionally in the caffeine. Coffee uplifts people in attitude. Hey, I haven't had my coffee yet. Let me have my coffee. And then you have economically. what it does to uplift people globally using coffee. And if you use it consciously, you can absolutely address the great disparity and the historical colonialism-based disparity within coffee. So that's what we do. I tell my team all the time, listen, coffee is the medium, which we've now expanded into tea and also now spirits. So our parent name is called Brew 112. Brew being all things brew, and then 112 being the prefix to the Brooklyn zip code. Every resident, every commercial entity in Brooklyn starts at 112. But I tell my team, like, coffee is the medium, but what we're selling is upliftment. And that's the $1 billion idea of where we're based in. Using coffee, using tea, using spirits consciously to uplift people functionally, economically, on attitude.
I love that mission. I love that. How does that show up in your day-to-day decisions?
Oh man, that goes everything from who we choose to partner with. You and I met as far as meeting through Pure Green, who we supply our coffee to as the official coffee supplier for Pure Green. But it's who we partner with. It's how we choose to hire and use a level of consciousness of who we misapply with. So not only are we a POC owned business, the entirety of our supply chain comes from our POC based suppliers. So when you look at the bean leaving our farm, that's a wonderful farmer named Faven. Faven is who we get the largest percentage of our beans from. We use Ethiopia at 52% of our bean share, and that all of our Ethiopia beans comes from Faven. So the large majority of our raw product comes from a woman of color. So that's first and foremost. But that's not the only bean that does. It's imported. Good friend, good partner in the industry, Phyllis Johnson. She brings in our bean, imports some of our beans, and then we roast. Actually, in Brooklyn, we roast in Brooklyn. Chef Jen is our head roaster. Chef Jen is also my wife, so that's a whole nother storyline within a storyline as far as family integrated into the business. But yes, my wife is the head roaster, and then I oversee the business in the capacity of the president and CEO. And then my partner, Angela, is in business development and really on the media side of the brand.
Okay, good. Well, and hopefully that story is a good story, right? I'm sure it is. Was it hard to build a supply chain like that?
Hard. When you move with intentionality, it's not hard. But just because you move with intentionality doesn't make it easy. You have to make sure at number one core that you are looking for high quality, because our brand represents high quality. So if you're going into it, that's like, hey, I'm looking for women who own businesses or who supply. If I'm looking for people of color, then you'll have a broad assortment. But let's call a spade a spade. Everybody doesn't make it with the level of quality and the standards that you carry for. So it's that level that makes it very, very challenging, because you are not doing it based off of POC and women. You're looking at off of quality standards and service that happen to be people of color and women in that space. So that level of intentionality, it drives us, but it doesn't make it easy at all.
No, that Cup started during a time of cultural change and social awareness. How has that influenced the way you built the business?
Well, I mean, a couple of things going on during that time. You're mid-pandemic. So there's a level of reservation. There's a level of fear of the unknown that's going on during this time period. You have a level of questioning belonging and acceptance that's happening by way of the George Floyd, and I think of what happened to George Floyd more specifically. And so when you're looking at those things and people are looking for a sense of belonging, acceptance, fairness, justice, people are looking for leadership against the unknown. People are looking for a level of also bonding with their fellow womankind. So it's no longer just about people I know. You're gaining new friends because we have a common fear. We have a common unknown. And I think that's the kind of climate that we were in during the pandemic and around the time that CUP emerged on the scene. And so a lot of those same things where it's like, that nature of common bonding with people and communities, that you follow that same thread into the business. Also, you also look at it of how do you create spaces of empowerment? And when you do that with a level of intentionality around economic empowerment, those are the things where you see that thread weave in that from the genesis of the brand.
How about your experience in lifestyle and brand building? How did that shape how your approach to launching Cup?
It drove a lot of it. So I'm telling you, so myself and nor Angela, we don't have the story of I've been drinking coffee all my life. I remember I was sitting at the table with my grandmother and my grandfather. We would sip coffee. Sometimes they would give me coffee and I was 6 years old. That's not our story. I've heard that story. It's a beautiful one. It's a beautiful one. But we have to be very transparent, honest, and authentic. That's not our story. That's definitely not my story. I started drinking coffee much later in life. Even now I don't drink that much coffee. I drink coffee enough to make sure the quality of my coffee that I serve and share is of top quality. And before I go into business decisions with suppliers, I'm clearly drinking coffee. But, on a day-to-day basis, I'm actually very particular about just how much coffee I may consume, especially being in the coffee business. I'm always around coffee. But a few things that shaped it is when you're coming from a lifestyle background, you do see where it's not all coffee, by no stretch is it all coffee. A lot of coffee has a very hipsterish, sometimes granola kind of approach to it. And if it's not that, you have this opposite that can have an air of pretentiousness and like, hey, you don't know about this kind of coffee and you don't, it's like, wait. Well, we're not going to do that. We want to make sure this is an environment that's inviting to all. All right. And one of the things that can hone in on that is create an environment and a culture that says, come and stay with us, come and sit with us, and then address some of the things culturally that affect us. So one of the things we affected early, and now it's becoming more common, but we were actually on the front side of this. We did no upcharges around non-dairy milk. All right. That was a common thing. If you wanted oat milk, if you want almond milk, if you wanted different plant-based milks, you can get it maybe, but you're going to get it at a cost, 50 cents, 75 cents, $1.50 even. And it was like, you know what? As much as that may exist, I also realized that a lot of our consumers are going to be lactose intolerant. And if we want to invite them into even trying coffee, then you want to do it where it's also more accessible for their current lifestyle with it. So we never upcharged for milk at its base level. That was one thing that we implemented from that space. Both myself and Angela have Caribbean backgrounds. My family is from Grenada and Barbados. Angela is from Montserrat in China. And so for us, it was like this huge West Indian element to it. So it's like, you know what? How do we infuse that into our menu? So you'll see it in the form of Jamaican patties within our menu. Wow. Coffee shop with Jamaican patties. Okay, cool. And then you'll see sorrel on our menu. You'll see ginger beer on our menu. These kind of things that integrate itself in it, the style and aesthetic of our brand and our cafe. And I separate the two because a lot of times when customers or guests, they may be introduced to us through our shop and may not know that we are in 8 different revenue generating channels that are beyond just the cafe. And so that being said, you look at it and it's like, wow, the attention to detail of stylistic design around interiors down to our packaging, our logo, how we show up in our communication. So not just saying it, but how we say it. That's how it really comes from a lot of my background and my resources around design and detail, discovery elements, and storytelling.
Yeah, that makes such a big difference, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I never thought about all the upsell with the non-dairy. I mean, people just accept it now. I never thought about that as being non-inclusive. So that's a very interesting perspective. So,
for sure.
What's working best for you right now in terms of growing Cup? Is it retail, e-commerce, events, something else?
I'll tell you this. I think that one of the areas that we served ourselves well is also one area that we've made a challenge for us. And I'm saying that transparently. Rather than open up Cup in the retail component, and then the easy, probably the most organic thought is, More stores. So take the nominal percentage of profit that you get at one and then try to multiply it by 10. So now you get some meaningful profit. As much as that is a growth engine, we actually chose, instead of doing that in a vertical standpoint, how do we look at it horizontally? Where if we are bringing in beans, how are we able to tell our message in as many channels as possible? So this is a good time to kind of speak to the different channels. So you have our cafes, that's one channel. You have grocery, where you'll find us in Whole Foods and Target. You'll find us enterprise, where we supply brands like Pfizer, American Express, Goldman Sachs, the Atlanta Hawks. Those are different enterprise channels. You'll find us on our Amazon storefront. We also do catering as a worthwhile and relevant channel for us as well. You also do, outside of that, you also have our e-commerce engine. So these are all the different spaces that we show up, as well as restaurant supply, where you're looking at Pure Green, you're looking at Tatiana's, the #1 restaurant in the country in many spaces. You have Toast of Lenox in Atlanta. You have different individuals in that space that we show up for and represent across our different channels of business.
Wow, that's really great. So how would you describe your ideal customer in each one of those channels?
I think that I don't know if the ideal customer adjusts across all the channels. You may look at it from a how do they access you, because each channel calls for its different way of accessing. Each channel calls for a common storytelling method, but the actual delivery of it or methodology of delivery on it is going to change based on the channel. So for example, you may have a channel for the cafe that's heavily driven off of experience, service. So a white glove, very guest tailored experience driven. That may find its way in the form of, instead of calling their name, you're actually saying, hey, John, I got a cappuccino for you. Well, if John's on his Zoom, if John's on a Google Meet, if John's in mid-thought of a paragraph, how much sense does it really call him for his cappuccino? Mm-hmm. Bring the cappuccino to John. You know, you may look at it as an extra notion of having to bring it to the table. We look at it as being intuitive to John's needs, right? So that's the cafe aspect of it. Meanwhile, the grocery component may need to be based on, do you want to be in all grocery stores, or do you want to make sure that where their customer finds you, they can also be accompanied with a level of service that extends back to your brand? So that may be Whole Foods, it may be Publix. We're not in Publix, but we totally respect how Publix services their guests and their customers. So much so that we don't even refer to much as customers in our shop, they're guests. So different elements as that. And those things differ between the channels more so than the store, than the actual customer. Listen, if you want a great cup of coffee, all right? If you are discerning about your cup of coffee, if you have a level of consciousness about how that coffee comes the way it is, and if you are dialed in from a novice level to a high level on technology and using technology for enhanced convenience, as well as a appreciation for service and design, there's a place for you with Cup and our communication lens. And if you happen to be dialed into different cultural cues that are of the pop culture space, you're going to really, really appreciate the messaging that we send to you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so that's how you balance between being mission driven and with the demands of scaling and profitability.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I mean, coffee is an inclusive product, as it should be. You know, I don't want to go down the space of this is coffee for this type of person. I don't want to, it's had enough exclusion already. And I don't want to be any component of a continued exclusivity of a great product, the second largest commodity in the world. We actually want to see how do we invite more people into the conversation, which is also why we expanded into tea in 2022, because you will find a lot of people where it's like, hey, I don't drink coffee, and then almost on cue, but I do drink tea. And so it was like, okay, so then how are we able to still talk to you about the concept of communities coming together around coffee and tea, which is when you look at both of them globally, the way coffee is enjoyed in Ethiopia is a completely different way from how it's enjoyed in the Western world, in the US. There is a level of No, let's be present. Let's be in the moment. Let's come together for an hour or two and let's drink coffee and pour into, pun intended, pour into each other's lives. Whereas the Western world is more heavily function based. I need a boost. I need some energy. I need to go be more productive. I need to stay up longer. Let me get some coffee. How are you able to connect in all these spaces? That really matters.
That makes sense. Is there different intricacies between the tea and coffee, whether it be in the supply chain and just the experience that you're trying to bring?
I would say the connecting process of it all is our level of involvement. With our just same way our coffee comes from crop to cup. As far as dealing with from the farmer to the importer and the whole process, we do all of the blends for our tea ourselves. So we have we have 10 teas altogether, 6 blends, and then 4 in there in like a peppermint, which is basically one profile for the tea as it is. But all the blends, we come up with all the blends ourselves. Our formulas down to the percentage of spearmint, lemongrass, lavender, these element ginger, and all these components. And we have our own specialty signature blends that we do in-house for our teas. So very hands-on into making sure the experience and the taste is on par with what we want it to be.
That's impressive. Is there any specific tea that you would recommend if someone to come into your shop for the first time?
I'm biased.
Okay.
I'm 100% biased. And the reason why I'm biased is 2 things. So I truly, I'm biased because I make all the blends myself. So inherently, I'm going to be biased. But then I have 2 in particular that I'm very fond of. I'll say 3. The first one is it's our lavender vanilla Earl Grey. Wow. And what we wanted to do with the lavender vanilla Earl Grey is at its core, it's a wake you up tea, right? It has caffeine. It's a black tea, and it usually comes in strong, and it's mostly consumed in the morning. We wanted to imagine a frame with square edges and making it round, and that's what we wanted to approach with Earl Grey. How are you more delicate in your approach to waking me up? So we infused lavender into the Earl Grey, so it was more softer. Lavender is more of a relaxing tone to it. It smells impeccable, and you replace some of the bergamot that's in there. Still has bergamot, but now you replace some of that with some of the lavender and vanilla notes. So that's one that I'm very proud of. It's very well received. Another one is learning and digging deeper into matcha and understand that all matcha is not the same. We have sourced deeply and heavily for some of the best grade of Japanese matcha. So much so that we call our matcha the no match matcha, as in there's no match. And then the last one is the one that I'm most biased to. This one is actually named after my daughter. Her name is Journey Vita Forte. Said backwards, Forte meaning strong, meaning life, and then her first name Journey. This tea that we offer is called Strong Life Journey. Strong Life Journey is a South African red rooibos. Red rooibos meaning there's no caffeine in it, appropriate for being named after a 2-year-old. So the Strong Life Journey is absolutely charmed. Those are the ones I'm definitely most biased to.
Oh, wow. That's so special. Yeah, I'm a tea drinker, so all of that sounds amazing. So I'm gonna go on Amazon right after this and order. So
I'm gonna take care of you well.
Okay, good. So let's transition to AI. Are you exploring any AI tools for Cup right now?
So interestingly, you and I met at the Pure Green Summit, and I wasn't able to come in for the whole summit because I was actually speaking in Dallas at Bishop Jakes, his conference, a wonderful conference, by the way. And I'm speaking about entrepreneurship, and I almost feel like I'm endorsing heavily a few AI tools. By no means do I call myself expert. I'm not by any stretch. There's just certain AI tools that I am very diligent on. On the lighter scale, and it's important to know that AI itself is a tool and not an app. I think a lot of people think like, hey, I got to get that AI. It's like, no, it's not an app that you got to go get. AI is a tool that's within many different apps and within many different platforms. But that said, I like Otter for when on as a recording tool and translating tool, transcribing tool for when I'm doing when I'm doing meetings. And then I know it follows up on that side. But my favorite right now, or my diaper dandy, as Dick Vitale says, is Google LM Notebook. I am deep in exploring the capabilities around Google LM Notebook. I'm saying it a lot these days, but I use it differently every day. One of the things I'm doing with Google LM Notebook now is how I listen. It helps me comprehend better. When I can take a meeting, just like you may be talking, and it's about business, I may record it on my notes section. I may use the AI within my Apple Notes to transcribe the voice notes into words. Then I copy and paste those voice notes into Google LM Notebook, and it turns those words into a podcast. And from a comprehension level, it makes it easier to comprehend. If I'm speaking somewhere or I'm about to lead my team, I can take my notes and put them directly into Google LM Notebook. It creates a podcast of my content where if that podcast doesn't achieve what I need it to, then I know it's not going to achieve what I need it to when I'm speaking to my team or speaking to different people. So I love Google LM Notebook. And then probably on a more simpler level, even not Genesis, what do you call it? Hey, what's it called? Gemini, because it has the VO tool that allows you to create videos in short form. So those are the kind of things that I'm looking at. But I'm enjoying the AI tools, and I have less fear about it, but I have a healthy respect for it.
Is there any area of your business where you wish AI can step in and save you time or help you scale faster?
Say it one more time for me.
Is there any one area in your business where you wish AI could step in and save you time or help you scale faster?
I'm sure there are. So I'd say transparently, for me, it's not necessarily about efficiency that I'm looking for. I know that those tools are out there, and I'm hungry to learn more about that. What I'm most curious about is how to use AI for greater either revenue generation, brand impact, and the form of that is, if you look at like the domain names where you have the .ai, what's the future of that look like for brands? Whether you're talking the Nikes, the Coca-Colas, whatever of these brands, how does it look like where they're using their AI domains to be able to build greater consumer connections that generate revenue or create greater emotional connections to the brands? That's what I'm curious about.
What about metrics and how you're measuring your business? What core metrics do you look at? Daily, weekly, monthly?
From a metric standpoint, I'm looking at the ones that directly affect my business. So whether it's in Shopify, Google Analytics for how I'm showing up on the search engines. I'm looking at my Amazon Analytics in that space. And of course, I'm closely dissecting Square Analytics. Not Square Analytics. Yes, Square Analytics. Just to see, because I'm looking at it at a very granular level. So one that I've been really tracking a lot this year is matcha is doing much stronger for us this year than in prior years. In prior years, it was still good, but it aligns with, yes, we've switched our supplier and our source for the matcha. So we have a very high grade. It cost us more, but I'm also seeing the return in how much more matcha we're getting out. But from a very product-based level, and then also understanding how to connect, because there's this conundrum that exists between creating a space where guests feel welcome to be there and get work done, but there's also the business side that says, I still have to turn these table or turn these transactions. So am I making sure that somebody sitting at the table for 2 hours is either generating enough transactions for me, because there's a loss on the amount of turn for that table. And so it's a constant analysis of how do you do right by a culture that is known and should become the coffee shops to ideate and to bond and to be productive, but also not put you out of business because you haven't run your business well enough to understand how does that mean for being able to get the maximizing your ATP and your ATPs or your turns on tables.
Out of curiosity, what is the ideal time in a table? for you?
I mean, there's some businesses that build their whole that build their whole contract of no tables, in and
Right.
out, transactional. Come in, go back out, no table. I don't want that space because it takes away the community side of it as much. If there was an ideal time, which is a very tricky question because people will use different ways, I would say about 35 to 40 minutes is it good for a coffee space. It's not the same as in a restaurant space that may say an hour and a half to 2 hours, because that's a deeper engagement around multiple courses of meals. But if you need to come in and use a table, I would say not turning the table, but regenerating a transaction from that table every 45 minutes would be appropriate.
Got it. Okay. And so if a customer stays longer, they would order something
Exactly.
again.
You
Right.
may come in at 10 o'clock and you might get a latte, but by 11 o'clock, are we getting a avocado toast? Are we getting a plant bacon lettuce tomato? And then with that plant bacon lettuce tomato, are you now saying, I want a lemonade to go with that? And then after you drink that, now we're at 12:30, 1 o'clock, and you say, you know what? It's a Friday around lunchtime. Is the bar open yet? Yes, it is. Bar opened up at 11. Let me get this cocktail. Boom. So now you would have had 4 different transactions at that table over a span of 2 hours or so.
Yeah,
Two,
that
3
makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. So earlier you talked about all your different channels. How do you currently get leads for new customers?
If you're talking about from the cafe level, a lot of that is through events. We do different events and that generates greater awareness. But no, there's no better lead for a cafe than executing with great quality and great service. Then people get the word out. And it's like, then you talk about the aesthetics, you talk about the story a little bit more. But if you serve a great cup and you do it with a level of intentionality and respect for service, that right there generates more new more new guests than you can imagine. Beyond that, for the different channels, it may be leveraging our network. So leveraging my network, leveraging Angela's network. She has a very extensive network in that she fits in that space of a celebrity profile. So whether that's leveraging brands that want to work with her, people that want to work with her, different events, and being able to leverage that and turn it into actionable, meaningful dollars of business for a cup as well. That's a space. Maybe it's Chef Jen and how she's notarized for being able to do notable for things with food. Our catering has grown substantially. She's been in the New York Food and Wine Festival for now 2 years straight. She's very well respected for the level of cuisine and gourmet she does infusing coffee into the gourmet. Yeah, so those are different things where it's like leveraging our network, leveraging what we're known for to be able to bring new people and new guests into our experience.
How about your growth 6 to 12 months from now? Like, what does that look like?
More greater efficiency. It's funny, I was just thinking about this the other day where it's like the goal isn't to add more. You want to grow by subtraction. You want to not even grow by subtraction. If you're operating at 40 to 50% with 10 people, you don't sit up there and say, let me add another 10 or 20 to get to my goal. Try to get to 90 plus with those same 10. And not only are you generating more revenue, but you're also generating a deeper relationship that's going to sustain you longer with them. So, I'm focused on how are we getting the most out of the relationships and partnerships and guests that we have already. And that's where my focus is over the next 6 to 12 months.
Okay. And what's holding you back from getting there faster? Is it just continuing to build the relationships?
I would say right now it goes to the other part that I was telling you, where it's like when you grow horizontally, what ends up happening is we've grown quite a bit over the 4 years that we've been in existence. However, that's when you're looking at growing each of those channels, each channel is like its own business.
Yeah.
Granted, it has a common product that you're leveraging, but each channel is its own business with its own almost 10,000 hours acquired with people and resources against that. And so sometimes when you take on all those channels, you can almost self cannibalize yourself because right when you get one channel generating, guess what? A new baby is on the way, and that new baby needs resources, and that new baby has stuff. And you need to be able to get over that hump and really get to that point where you're getting the ROI and the growth really in that channel there that you invested in. But now you have another opportunity to grow in this space. So I want to kind of hone that in, kind of put a memoriam on growing new channels and just really focus in at a deeper, more meaningful level with the people and the partners and suppliers that we have already.
Do you almost have separate teams for each of those channels?
In some spaces, and then you have crossover. It's appropriate. You have a hat here, you have a hat here, you have all those different things going on, and that's where you're at.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's talk about your leadership. You worked at the intersection of culture and commerce. What lessons have shaped your leadership style?
Tell your story unapologetically. It's your compass. The more you know about why you do it, because a lot of people are going to have opinions. You should do this. Have y'all considered this? Have you do this? And it doesn't mean you're closed-minded to that. But if you have your compass of why you're doing it, and in entrepreneurship, there's a time to be about the money past that time. For me, it's really about impact. And if you do the impact, yes, money does matter. But the reality is, how am I able to drive this home from really delivering on the message and promise that I have set out?
What would you tell your younger self before starting this business?
I know one thing I told myself is when you're coming into business, there's going to be sacrifices, but you've heard that enough times. So what we don't hear enough is you have a voice and a choice in what's to sacrifice. And so a lot of times you hear the stories of entrepreneurs where their families have been destroyed, or their health has been destroyed, or their marriage destroyed, or their relationship with their children. And I've learned through my past engagement in entrepreneurship is, no, my wife is off the table. My child, she's off the table. I've learned the hard way. My health is off the table. I had a stroke in 2023, a minor stroke, but it's still hospitalized.
Wow.
And at that point, it was like, I have to take my health off the table. You have to get your required sleep, and you have to, because this takes its pound of flesh one way or the hard way. And so be discerning and be deliberate about what's on and not on the table for the journey ahead in entrepreneurship. Yeah. That's what I've learned in this. Not exactly the answer to your question about what I would say to my younger self, but that's the freshest thing I can really share.
Yeah, and that's great advice just for life in general.
Exactly.
As a leader, what do you think is the most important thing when building a brand with purpose?
Surround yourself with people that share that same purpose. It's very, very challenging when you're building a team and your partner might not, or your teammates might not, or your staff may not, your investors may not, because every day you're going to get tried on the flexibility on that purpose. And you really, really want to know, like, hey, we don't need to have the same approach, but we need to have a common respect for the purpose of the brand.
And it sounds like you've done that.
Yes, I'm learning more and more each day. It's not a walk in the park. There are times when it's more challenging than others, but it's something that you get stronger on each day. So when you feel staff or hires don't line with it, listen, you can cut, but you choose to cut bait much sooner, because you know that sitting on it is going to deteriorate where the team needs it may be. There's some tough conversations you got to have with partners. It doesn't mean end to conversations as like, okay, or like, but you do have to level set on more and more. So those are the kind of things.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And if someone wants to support Cup, where can they find you? How can they get involved? Where can they purchase your blends?
I would say Cup Ecom is fulfilled by Amazon as well. So that's our 3PL. Our Amazon storefront is definitely it. If you find yourself in Brooklyn, definitely stop by our shop in Bed-Stuy, New York. All those different channels there are definitely it. Follow us on Coffee Uplifts People, the website, on Instagram and social media channels as well.
Okay,
And
perfect.
you can follow me. I'm Mr. Tony Forte on Instagram. I'm MrTonyForte.com on my website. So you can follow along on that. I'm more private than normal, but I find that as part of the story and the values, I need to share it more.
I'm definitely going to follow you right after this, as you'll get a new follower from me. So thank you so much, Tony. It was so nice talking to you. I really enjoyed this conversation. And that's a wrap for today's episode. If you got value, share it, tag us, and don't forget to hit follow. Catch you next time on the Ascend Growth AI podcast.